A wolf finds a baby in a car. He brings her to the woods, and the unthinkable happens. This amazing story is one that many would have not believed because it almost sounds too good to be true. The incredible tale of nature defying odds and the perseverance of one man will leave you astonished. It was a day like no other. A young mother was driving in a wooded area on her way back home with her 6-month-old baby in the back seat, fully strapped into her car seat. The woman was driving safely at a normal speed, checking the mirror occasionally to ensure the baby was safe and comfortable. Nothing would have prepared this young mother for the events that happened next. Out of nowhere, an animal appeared to be a deer or an antelope jumped out in front of the woman's car at quick speed. Startled and scared, the woman's instincts kicked in and she swerved her vehicle to avoid hitting the oblivious animal. However, the road that she swerved on was very uneven and on rocky paths, so her car swung far out and she lost control of the wheel. The car swiveled through the dirt road, crashed into a big tree. The woman's neck swung with the force of the car's movement as she suffered severe whiplash. She struggled to unbuckle her seatbelt with trembling fingers, and soon enough, she fell out of the vehicle, her head pounding and her vision beginning to blur. She crawled to the side car door, attempting to pull out her baby. She could already see smoke coming from the hood of the front of the car. The terrified mother, now trembling, managed to swing open the rear car door before collapsing into a heap onto the floor. The brightness of spring afternoon sun would soon set, and the woman was fearful for her life and the life of her baby. That they would be stuck here while it got dark. The sounds of the baby's cry echoed through the atmosphere. As if the events couldn't get more scary, the woman noticed a faint sound grow closer to her. She saw from the corner of her eye, and then right in front of her, a big wolf approaching, the door where the baby's car seat dangled out. The woman was overcome with great fear, and as she tried to scream to protest and possibly scare the wolf away, however, before she could let out a scream, she lost complete consciousness. The wolf used its teeth to drag the car seat, with the baby still in the seat, out of the car and onto the ground. The cry from the baby did not stop as the wolf dragged the car seat across the ground to the other side, moving as far away from the car as possible. Next, the wolf went towards the unconscious mother and dragged her by her clothes to the edge of the road far away from the smoking car. The baby did not stop crying and was eager for some comfort. However, the poor mother was unresponsive to her child's cry. The wolf gnawed on the safety belt near the car seat with its teeth, picking up the baby from the car seat, walked away from the disastrous scene, and disappeared through the tall trees into the woods. Meanwhile, the young mother, who had passed out and was not waking up, had a special app on her phone that had safety features that could react and detect if a car had been in an accident. It would immediately alert the nearby emergency services. As soon as her car had jerked and tumbled, smoke billowing from the engine, the app had recorded this and sent out a distress signal with the location of the crash. The call went out and the fire services and ambulances were ready on their way. Also nearby was a man who was a former military search and rescue officer and now worked as a ranger, who assisted the fire and police services in local searches and rescue operations. He got the alert as well, and since he was much closer to the site, he decided he would go down there and see what he could do. The brave man approached the accident site and saw that the car was in flames at this point. He ran towards the burning car, looked into the driver's seat, and saw that no one was there. He then decided to search the surrounding area, but he did not need to go far when he saw the young woman on the ground. She was covered in dirt and her body was twisted. He ran up to her and noticed that her body was twisted in a very strange position. He knew not how to move her just in case she had suffered a neck injury. If he attempted to move her, it could lead to paralysis or even worse. So the young man sat with her and checked her breathing until the paramedics arrived. A few minutes later, the emergency lights were flashing and siren sounds were blasting as the fire trucks and ambulances sped in. The fire services tackled the car that was almost completely engulfed in flames, while the paramedics carefully put the woman on a stretcher and boarded her into the ambulance. Inside the ambulance, the paramedics got to work to try and save this young woman who had just had the worst experience of her life. They put an oxygen mask on her and hooked her up to machines to monitor her heart rate and blood pressure. Just then, the woman jerked awake and looked around. She realized where she was and began to remove her restraints. The paramedics tried to calm her down and ordered her not to move, as she may have suffered a spinal injury. Yet the woman was relentless. She started making unrecognizable noises. The EMT pulled off her oxygen mask to give her the opportunity to speak. Baby, where's my baby?" she yelled before she passed out again as her blood pressure dropped. The paramedics looked at each other with confusion and surprise before they immediately got to work trying to stabilize the woman again. The paramedics could not risk going back to the crash site because this woman's health was critical. They quickly radioed back to the other available services, informing them that there was a baby missing from the crash site and it was a matter of urgency. The young man, who was a search and rescue expert, also received that call. He had almost gotten to his home when he swerved his car around and headed back to the site. He was still the closest, and he called to let the other first responders know that he was heading back. By the time he got to the crash site, the fire had been put out. He rushed over to the car that was burned to a crisp. He peered into the back seat, fearing the worst had happened, but there was nothing there, no baby or no remains. He sighed momentarily before looking around again. He was angry at himself for not doing a thorough sweep of the place while he was there the first time. The man walked over to where he had sat with the woman. Behind some tall bushes, he saw a car seat that was face down. He turned it around, but the car seat was empty. His heart picked up speed. He scoured everywhere around but could not find evidence of a baby. He went back to the car seat and noticed that the safety belts had been cut off in a jagged way. Suddenly, his instincts kicked in. He noticed that along the drag marks, there was what appeared to be footprints. He bent down and examined these prints more carefully. They were not just ordinary prints, they were the prints of a large wolf. Immediately, the man went back into his car and grabbed some essentials he felt he might need. Then he followed the wolf prints as they led him into the woods. He radioed the emergency services that were on the air and updated them to the new information. Brave man's heart was racing as he put on his flashlight and went deeper and deeper into the woods, following the large, daunting wolf prints. The sun began to set and the sky grew darker. The man had been in the woods for almost 2 hours and yet had found the wolf or a sign of the baby. The wolf prints had faded a while back and he was relying on an instinct and hope to lead him to the baby. The young man had been doing search and rescue for years, mostly for adults and teenagers. They were at least able to try and stay safe, but this was a baby he was looking for. Every second was important in looking for her. This was the most afraid the man had ever been. Night drew soon, and the man hadn't yet found the baby. Other search and rescue people had come in to join the search, but they had no luck either. The young man decided to spend the night in the forest. He couldn't imagine going back to his home and sleeping in his comfortable bed while the little baby was still nowhere to be found. The young man found a small clearing and decided to sleep there for the night. He would continue his search early and bright the next day. As he tried to sleep, he could hear the howls of the wild wolves and his heart grew heavier and heavier. The only thing he could do was to hope. That was the only thing that got him through the night. Meanwhile, at the hospital, the mother, who had been rescued and suffered an internal brain injury from the crash. The doctors had no choice but to put her into a medically induced coma so she could heal. Her husband had been called and he rushed down to be beside her. When he arrived, he found his baby daughter was not there. He was told the tragic news that she had not yet been found. The dad was eager to go with the search team to look for his baby girl. He was advised to leave it to the professionals, as this was a very dense forest area. He was advised to stay with his wife. The next morning, as the first rays of sun peeked through the horizon, the search ranger was awake. He had gotten a call that the mother had made it in no time to the hospital, but was in a coma. The ranger couldn't help but think it was probably for the best that she didn't know the terrible circumstances surrounding her baby girl. The young man got to work looking again. When he looked around, he sighed in frustration. There were fresh wolf prints all over the place, and there appeared to be multiple sets of them. He did not know which ones to follow. But he decided not to give up. He trusted his instincts and followed a set of wolf prints that appeared to be deeper in the soil than the others. He figured that if by any chance the animal had the baby, it would cause a deeper indentation because of the increased weight distribution. As the ranger pulled up to what appeared to be a den, he once again thanked his instincts as he came face to face with a large gray wolf. The animal was lying on the ground, but it was alert. As the man stepped closer, the wolf perked up and locked eyes with him. Shaken, the man took slow steps towards the animal to get a closer look. Then he saw the tiny feet of a human baby nestled in the fur of the wolf. His heart sank again as he feared the worst. He grabbed his flare gun and continued to round the corner, never once taking his eyes off the wolf. Just then he heard the babble of a baby. She was alive. He lowered his gun and approached with more urgency. To the man's surprise, the wolf moved out of the way and allowed the man to take the baby. The night had been cold and the man had feared the baby would suffer, but the wolf had kept the baby warm. Immediately he checked the baby for any trauma. The baby seemed healthy, apart from some bruises. He didn't want to risk the possibility of an internal injury for the baby, so he wrapped her up and quickly made his way out of the woods. It was a long walk to his car, and on the way he called the hospital to let him know the baby had been found and he was bringing her to the hospital. As soon as he got to his car parked at the edge of the woods, he noticed a wolf had followed him, almost like it was making sure that the baby was carried away safely. A few days later, the woman was waking up from her medically induced coma. She was overjoyed to see her loving husband and precious baby smiling back at her. Her doctors came in and tried to reacquaint her with the world. She was told all the happenings from the past few days, and she told the doctors that the last thing she recalled was a deer jumping in front of her car and her swerving off the road. She didn't recall seeing a wolf approach her and her baby at the crash site. She did not recall telling the EMTs and the ambulance about her baby, and she was extremely grateful to be alive and to find that her baby was unharmed and safe. Some hours later, the doctors came back into the room and introduced her to someone who had been eager to meet her once she woke up. It was the ranger. Once the young woman had been told everything of what he had done in order to find her baby, she was just as eager to meet him. The brave man walked in, a smile on his face. Once he saw the little girl smile and laugh, she bounced in her father's arms. He was moved to tears. The mother, so full of emotion, kept on thanking him for his bravery and determination to find her daughter. She told him that he was brave for scaring off the wolf that could have harmed her daughter. The young man made her know that, on the contrary, the wolf had not posed any threat to the baby and had actually kept her safe and warm. Upon hearing this, the woman was even more surprised. Her eyes welled up with tears again as she looked at the rosy cheeks of her perfect little angel. A few more days passed as the young woman who had suffered a tragic accident was discharged from the hospital with a clean bill of health. Her and her family met the young ranger at the exit as they headed for their cars. The ranger led them back towards the crash site. Once they parked their cars, the mother came down from the car with the baby in her arms, and they walked over to where the car had been burned. All that was left was ash on the ground. The car had been removed, a reminder of the most unforgettable day of her life. The ranger led the woman and her family back into the woods. This time he knew a quick route to the den. When they arrived at the den, they saw the large gray wolf. It came out of the den and moved warily towards them. The woman and her husband gasped. This was a very large animal. They never thought it was this big. How could such a large animal be so gentle with the baby? The little baby giggled in her mother's arms, and the wolf tilted its head to the side to look at the baby once more before disappearing back into its den. It was as if it had came out, saw the baby was safe, healthy, and back with their family, and it had returned to its own comfort knowing everything was all right. The young woman would be forever grateful to the brave man who held on to hope and put himself into danger to ensure her baby daughter was found safe. She would also be grateful forever to the mysterious wolf who was sent against expectations and saved her daughter, going as far as protecting the baby and keeping her warm through the night. Things like this didn't happen every day. It's a beautiful story, and she hoped that her daughter would tell it one day when she was all grown up. What do you think about this story? Let us know in the comment section below.